Hare Krishna and welcome to all the devotees online. Thank you very much for your attendance and association as we continue Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 1, Chapter 18, verses 32 to 40. This section is actually till the end, but we're going to break it up into two sections. Parikshit cursed by a Brahmana boy. Om Agyanatimi Vandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshoranulitam Yena Tasmei Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manovistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Taparakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vevacha Patitanam Pavinebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Sarva Shastra Piyusha Sarva Vedeka Satpala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnadya Sarva Lokai Triprada Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad Bhagavata Prabhu Kalidandorida Aditya Shri Krishna Parivartita O Srimad Bhagavatam, O nectar churned from the ocean of all Vedic scriptures, O most prominent transcendental fruit of all the Vedas, O you are enriched with the jewels of all spiritual philosophical conclusions, O you who grant spiritual vision to all the people, O you who grant spiritual vision to all the people of the world, O life breath of the Vaishnava devotees, O Lord, you are the sun which has arisen to dispel the darkness of Kali Yuga. You are actually Lord Krishna who has returned amongst us. Paramananda Pataya Prema Varsha Shivayate Sarvada Sarva Sevyaya Shri Krishnaya Namastute. O Srimad Bhagavatam, I offer respectful obeisance unto you. I read you unattained transcendental bliss. For your silvers rain pure love poured upon the reader. You always to be served by everyone, for you are incarnation of Lord Krishna. Madeka Bandhu Mad Sangye Mad Guru Mad Mahadana Man Nishtaraka Mad Bhagya Madananda Namastute. O Srimad Bhagavatam, O my only friend, O my companion, O my teacher, O my great wealth, O my deliverer, O my good fortune, O my blessed, I offer respectful obeisance unto you. Sadhu Sadhu Tadahin Ati Nicho Chitaraka Hanamuncha Kadachin Mam Premna Rikatyospura. O Srimad Bhagavatam, O give us saintliness to the unsaintly, O uplift the very fallen. Please do not ever leave me. Please become manifest Mahatma truth, accompanied pure love of Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Janma Jasya Yuton Vayadi Tarata Charte Swabhigna Swara Tene Brahma Hidaya Adikavaye Muyanti Yatsuraya Tejo Vari Mridam Yatha Vinimayo Yatrati Sugomisha Dhamna Svena Sadani Rastapuakam Satyam Param Dhimahi. O my Lord Shri Krishna, Son of Vasudev, O pervading personality of Godhead, I offer respectful obeisance unto you. I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth and the primal cause of all causes of creation, sustenance, destruction of the manifested universes. He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations and is independent because there is no other cause beyond him. It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge under the heart of Brahmaji, the original living being. By him, even great sages and demigods are placed in illusion, as one is bewildered by illusory representation of water seen in fire, land seen on water. Only because of him, the material universe is temporarily manifested by the reactions of the three modes of nature, pure factual, although they are unreal. I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna, who is eternally existent in the transcendental abode, which is forever free from illusory representation of material world. I meditate upon him, for he is absolute truth. Rayana Upasha Sabya Klavas Minduge Jana Manda Sumanda Mateo Manda Bhagyapadrita, all learned one in this age of Kali many but short lies, the quarrelsome, lazy, misguided, unlucky, and above always disturbed. Narayam Namaskritya Narachevam Naram Tamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tko Jai Mudirayet. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisance unto the personality of God in Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supreme human being, and unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess learning, and unto Srila Vyasa, the author. Savai Pumsa Parodharmo Yatho Bhaktira Dokshja Ahituka Pratyata Yayatma Suprasidhiti. The supreme occupation dharma for all humanity is that by which man can attain to loving devotional service unto the transcendent Lord. Such devotional service must be unmotivated and uninterrupted to completely satisfy the self. Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakta Yoga Prayojita Janayat Vairagyam Jnanam Chayad Ahitukam. By rendering devotional service under the personality of God as Shri Krishna, one immediately acquires causes knowledge and detachment from the world. Vedanti Tattvavidas Tattvam Yaj Gnanam Advayam Brahmeti Paramatmeti Bhagavaniti Sabhyate. Learned transcendentals who know the absolute truth calls non-dual substance Paraman Paramatma Bhagavan. Shri Shushoshadhanasya Vasudeva Kataruchi Syan Mahatsavaya Vipra Punya Tirthan Chevanat. O twice born sages, by serving those devotees completely free from all vice, great services done by such service, one gains affinity for hearing the messages of Vasudeva. Shranvatam Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Hridhan Prastoya Bhadrani Vidunati Suritsatam. Shri Krishna, the personality of God, who is Paramatma, supposed in everyone's heart and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses desire from material enjoyment from the heart of the devotees, develop the urge to hear his messages, which in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. Nasta Prayashu Bhadreshu Nitam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavata Uttama Sloke Bhaktir Bhaviti Bhakti Bhavati Neshtiki. By regular attendance in the classes in the Bhagavatam and by rendering service to the pure devotees, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed. And loving service under the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, established as an irrevocable. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We are continuing Srimad Bhagavatam based on the teachings of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, the founder Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Hare Krishna and welcome again. Let us cover any feedback that you can share from chapter 18, verses 24 to 31 that we covered last week. Anything that caught your attention, anything that you remember, please share that in the chat. Nalini Kantaprabhu says, Vedic culture is so profound. What did you find that made you think it was so profound? That's the sutra. You need to unpack the sutra. Tell us, why is it so profound? Law of reception. Yes. I actually, in the power statement, I have quoted that. Prabhupada says the law of reception in the codes of the Vedic principle states that even if an enemy is received at home, he must be received with all respect. So that is why the Vedic culture was so profound. It was rooted deeply in a culture that is based on very, very high values. Then I'll cover some of the other quotes that our statements of Srila Prabhupada. The Supreme Lord is so kind to his pure devotees that in improper time, he calls such devotees up to him and thus creates an auspicious circumstance for the devotee. Thus the Lord sometimes creates an awkward situation and the devotee becomes obliged to renounce all worldly affairs. The devotee can understand the situation by the signal of the Lord, but others take it to be unfavorable and frustrating. Someone who's really in tune with the Supreme Lord, he will recognize that this is Krishna's arrangement. And he will not be frustrated, he will not be depressed, he will not be upset. He'll actually take that situation favorably and use it simply to increase his surrender, dedication, and glorification of the Lord. And then the last one, the devotees like Maharaj Parikshit are powerful enough to forbear such distresses caused by the will of the Lord, and they are never disturbed. So, because they are seeing everything in relation to Krishna, then they do not become unduly disturbed. They don't become, they never become disturbed. Namavarika says, for those who surrender to Krishna, he makes all arrangements, beautiful arrangements, as we see in Maharaj Parikshit being as the medium of Srimad Bhagavatam and Arjuna being the medium of Bhagavad Gita. Yes. And that should be also our aspiration, that we also want to qualify ourselves. And the qualification is surrender. Well, Bhakti Yoga, also Bhakti Yoga is most powerful of all. By the process of Bhakti Yoga, by the process of surrender to the Supreme Lord, we become instruments. And when we become instruments, then Krishna can use us as instruments, just like Krishna used Arjuna as an instrument. So right now we are wanted to use the word, we are self-controlled. Not in the sense that I can control my senses, but actually we are self-controlled. We are controlling ourselves, and because we are controlling ourselves, we are not instruments in the hand of Krishna. We want Krishna to control ourselves. We don't want to be self-controlled. We want to be Krishna-controlled. So even self-control is dangerous. We want to be Krishna-controlled. Let Krishna control our senses, Rishikesh, the master of the senses. Let him control our life, direct our life, dictate our life. But that means surrender. That requires surrender. That requires understanding that Krishna is my all in all. Otherwise, why would I want to surrender to Krishna? Who's he? You see, the gopis were completely dedicated. They gave their whole life to Krishna. Therefore, they are classified as the greatest of all devotees. Manusha says, Prabhu, maybe a question for later. In hindsight, we see the Lord's hand in unfavorable situations, but how do we regulate our responses during such circumstances? Yes, and we spoke about this, that in the heat of the moment, we may not see the hand of the Lord. And that is why we need to cultivate the practice of pressing the pause button. Nobody says you have to react there and there. There's no scriptural statement that says in every situation immediately respond. No, you can put a pause button. If you are in a heated situation, all you have to do is turn away, walk in the opposite direction, put your hand in the bead bag, and chant Hare Krishna. Chanting Hare Krishna will cool you down. And then you come home and you contemplate, you reflect. You, as they say, you brew on the situation. Contemplate what happened, what could I say, what can I say, how can I react, what's Krishna's hand in the situation, what would be the best favorable response. If I respond like this, what will be the consequence? If I respond like this, what will be the consequence? Get some advice, read Bhagavad Gita, read scriptures, get some wisdom, and then decide what would be the best response if a response is required. So it's really about put a pause on that situation. Put a pause on that event. Do not respond. Especially don't open your mouth. When people open their mouth, they just make it worse. So keep quiet, put a pause, leave, chant Hare Krishna, and then decide how you want to respond. Nalini Kanta says, we also love the story of how Srila Prabhupada gave the lady simply wonderful in Bhagavad Gita. Yes. Prabhupada is preaching in so many situations, it's inconceivable to even comprehend. Shamananda Prabhu says, Hare Krishna Prabhu, we see how Krishna makes arrangements with the devotees achieving something. Prabhupada, everything is theory, no practical. 10 directions, 8 directions, corner, north, east, east, west, up and down. So everywhere he is present. So Krishna has got 10 hands. So my father used to say, when Krishna takes your money or possessions in 10 hands, how can you protect it with 2 hands? And when he gives you in 10 hands, how can you take in your 2 hands, loves? So in my case, it has become practical. Everything he has taken in 10 hands. And how now he's giving in 10 hands, laughter. I'm practically experiencing. My Guru Maharaj ordered me, you do this. I was trying to save my business, my family with 2 hands. And Krishna took it in 10 hands. And now, after making me beggar, he is giving me 10 hands. You take as much as you like. Now I'm thinking of my father's instruction. Thank you for quoting that. Nice. Yes. We need to cultivate faith in Krishna's guidance, in Krishna's control, in Krishna's instructions. And it's not automatic. It's not something that is mechanical. That's what makes the process of bhakti so wonderful. Because we are dealing with Krishna, who's a sentient being, a personality. And we're dealing with ourselves who are persons. So Krishna responds as a person and according to your desire, according to your dedication, according to your commitment, according to your surrender. And it doesn't mean that if one is 100% surrendered, or let's say if one is 200% surrendered, that Krishna is going to make everything wonderful. No. Because we don't know what Krishna wants and how he wants to use us. So we know that whatever Krishna does is perfect and beautiful. Therefore, if we are sincere in our devotional service and intention and motive, then no matter what arrangement is made by Krishna, the end result is always glorious. And we may not be seeing the end result, we may not be at the end result, but we have to keep faith that the end result will always turn out beautiful. And that's the exciting part, that I've gone through some turmoil and no problem. I can go through one turmoil after another, and I may even fail in seeing Krishna's hands. Oh, that's okay. I failed to see Krishna's hands. I responded. I made a mess. I made it worse. So, okay, no problem. Because I cannot artificially look at a situation or even artificially react to a situation like it's not affecting, it's not impacting me. So I have to learn and grow through the situations. And even if I trip and fall, I get up and continue to surrender. See, so I may fail in my response. I may even fail in seeing Krishna's hand, but I will never fail in continuing my surrender to Krishna, in continuing my service to Krishna. Prabhupada said that if you cannot serve in one temple, that doesn't mean you stop serving. You go to another temple. There are so many temples. We have 108 temples in the world. So at that point in time, Prabhupada had 100 temples. That doesn't mean, you have challenge in one temple, you stop serving. No, you go to another temple and you carry on serving. So that's the point. Prabhupada didn't say, no, everything will be, utopian, wonderful, there'll be no problems. Prabhupada said, that is Mayavad. If you don't have conflicts, if you don't have issues, if you don't have differences, that's Mayavad, impersonalism. Prabhupada told GBCs that there will be differences. You go into the room, you fight like cats and dogs, but you come out with a solution, one solution that everybody agrees, and you move with that. So there will be conflicts, there will be challenges, but you never give up the process of Krishna consciousness. That is the pass mark. And because you never give up the process and you continue, then as you mature, at some point in time, now you look back and the experience that you gain will now give you greater revelation. And then you'll be able to see, oh yes, now I can see why the Lord made that arrangement. Because if he didn't make that arrangement, I wouldn't be in this situation. I wouldn't be at this point in my life here at this point now, in this wonderful and beautiful situation. So what was engineered by the Lord, and even in that engineering where I failed, I'm still coming out successful. Why? Because I did not give up the lotus feet of Krishna. So that is very, very important. And you're probably saying that the theory is there, practical will come. Like in school, we have theory and practical. So we are learning the theory. We may have been already given some practicals. So like that, we will have to learn and grow and mature more and more. Thank you. Let us continue. So we're going to be covering now 32 to 40. As I said, it's the last section, 32 to 50, but we're going to cover through 40 verses. We heard how Maharaj Parikshit was feeling exhausted, feeling tired, feeling fatigued, and he arrives at Shamika Rishi's ashram, and he has no response, no reception, no feedback was given. And this made him even more upset. So upset that as he was leaving, there was a dead snake near the ashram, and he took the dead snake and garlanded the rishi, and then off he goes. And while going, he felt he was repenting, and he was thinking, did I do the right thing? Was the sage genuinely in samadhi? I don't know. I don't think I did the right thing. He was regretting. And now the news of what had happened, the event. So we heard of an event that has taken place. On one hand, it's an event. On the other hand, it is instrumentally arranged by the Lord. But Maharaj Parikshit and those around cannot see Krishna's hand. And because they cannot see Krishna's hand, then naturally they're not going to respond favorably, because they're seeing, oh, the king is involved. Right? So let's see now, when this news goes to the sage's son, what happens. And we'll be able to learn many lessons even from this specific situation that we're going to be hearing now in the Bhagavatam. Text 32. Tasya putro tije jasri viharan balako ribakhe ragnagham pati praptitam tatva tattam shrutva tetram abravit. The sage had a son who was very powerful, being a Brahmana's son. While he was playing with inexperienced boys, he heard of his father's distress, which was occasioned by the king. Then and there, the boy spoke as follows. So who can type in the chat something in this verse, a word in this verse that is misplaced, that is not true to the real situation that is facing us? One word. Any responses? Not sure how long my statement thing takes, about 20 seconds to get to you on the other side. One word in the English translation that tells us something's not right from what we already heard in the previous verses. The sage had a son who was very powerful, being a Brahmana's son. While he was playing with inexperienced boys, he heard of his father's distress, which was occasioned by the king. Then and there, the boy spoke as follows. No responses. Okay. The word that I'm looking for is distress. So why is this word distress not correct? He heard of his father's distress. Please share in the chat. Why is this now not appropriate? He heard of his father's distress. If you want to, you can even unmute yourself and speak. Everyone's very quiet today. And the reason I am bringing this is because it's going to highlight an important point for us. Shamananda Prabhu says, yes, the sage was not disturbed. And how do we know the sage was not disturbed? He's never suffered it from his father. The sage was in meditation. So if we heard the sage was in meditation, that's why he never responded to the king. So if he didn't respond to the king, he was in total samadhi, he was in trance, he was one with the Supreme. Then how come here in this verse, it is said that he heard of his father's distress? And in simple English, we would say, because it is a rumor. So someone saw the situation, and now they came to the son, maybe their friend, and they told their friend the situation by adding some spices. It's like the Chinese whisper. You see something or you hear something, then you tell your friend, and that friend tells somebody, and that friend's, after a while, few people hearing that message is completely distorted. Because we have 4 defects. And one of the defects is we have a tendency to make mistake. We are illusioned. We have a tendency to add spices to a situation. Instead of telling it that the king came and the king was not received, and it seems that your father was in meditation, the king possibly got upset and put a dead snake. So this was the situation. No. The father was very upset, very distressed. You won't believe it, how your father was crying. It's a scene that I couldn't even tolerate. I had to come tell you very quickly. It was all the king's fault. I saw it with my own eyes. You won't believe it. So you're adding spice, distorting the truth. So we have to be very careful with rumors. Scripture says if you spread a rumor, you are 50% liable for the reaction. Whether it's true or false, you are liable for reaction. So we have to be very careful. And what's even worse is this is arranged by Krishna. So if this is arranged by Krishna, then it's none of your business to interfere with the situation. In fact, everybody should pause and say, what is Krishna planning here? My Lord, what do you want out of the situation? But because we have a nature to control, because we have a nature to add spicing, then we fall prey to the law of karma. So this is exactly what happened in this situation. And let's see how this young boy is going to react. Due to Maharaj Parikshit's good government, even a boy of tender age, accustomed to playing with other inexperienced boys, could become as powerful as a qualified Brahmana. Now just see Prabhupada's amazing heart. Prabhupada is seeing, even in this young boy's situation, Prabhupada is seeing the good, glorious quality of Maharaj Parikshit. That because of Maharaj Parikshit's good governance, even this young boy was trained. The arrangement was made in his kingdom. The Brahmanas were protected, and the Brahmanas could raise their sons. They were born in a Brahman family, and they could be raised Brahmanically from small so that they could become very powerful. So probably seeing the glory of Maharaj Parikshit even in this young boy. This boy was known as Shringi, and he achieved good training in brahmacharya by his father so that he could be as powerful as a Brahmana even at that age. So the glory of being raised nicely as a brahmachari, Brahmanical qualities under a Brahmana, very, very powerful. But because the age of Kali was seeking an opportunity to spoil the cultural heritage of the 4 orders of life, the inexperienced boy gave a chance for the age of Kali to enter into the field of Vedic culture. You could be brought up wonderfully and have been trained nicely, but if you give leeway to Kali, Kali will take full advantage, without doubt. And we know that Kali had no place to stay. Maharaj Parikshit's rule was so powerful that nowhere in his kingdom Kali could take shelter. So Kali was seeking, where can I stay? Where can I stay? And here was a perfect arrangement of negligence, of giving, or of opening up oneself to the influence and the quality of Kali. And we'll cover why. Hatred of the lower orders of life began from this Brahmana boy under the influence of Kali, and thus the cultural life began to dwindle day after day. So this was the beginning of downfall. Hatred for different social or spiritual orders. The Kshatriya is meant to be under the Brahmana, because the Brahmana is the head and the Kshatriyas are the arms. But the Kshatriyas naturally are also respected by the Brahmanas because they need to give protection. And when we start to hate, like the Kshatriyas hating the Brahmanas, or the Vaishyas, or the Vaishyas hating the other orders, or the Brahmanas hating the other orders, that breaks down the interdependence and the cooperation. The first victim of Brahmanical injustice was Maharaj Parikshit, and thus the protection given by the king against the onslaught of Kali was slackened. So first downfall that gave Kali a leeway to come in, and that's all Kali needed for Kali to then start shaking. And since then, it has started dwindling. There are many earthly creatures who constantly represent, in relation to how this young, inexperienced boy, Shringi, is going to respond. He's going to respond in an unfavorable way. He's going to respond in an angry way. And he's going to respond without doing due diligence. He heard of a situation. And why did he react? It's my father. Therefore, he reacted. And we're going to hear how he reacts. So if it was somebody else's father, he wouldn't have reacted. He would have just said, oh, interesting, not good. But because it is his father, this I and my, this is also why the whole Bhagavad Gita was spoken. In Bhagavad Gita, Dhritarashtra, he starts speaking. What did my sons and the sons of Pandu? Dharma Kshetra, Kurukshetra, Samaveta Yutsava, Mammaka Pandavascheva, Mammaka. What did my sons and the sons of Pandu, like, there were some other people's family members. The Pandavas were also his sons, but he discarded them. So this I and my is deeply rooted in the conditioned soul's consciousness. Like one life member came to Srila Prabhupada and said, Swamiji, why do you open up so much temples? I mean, why do you open up your own temples? There's so many temples, you can take charge of the different temples. Why you want to open up another temple? So Prabhupada asked him, who's a lady next to you? I said, my wife. He said, so, and those kids. So our kids. So why didn't you adopt other people's children? Why you made your own children? Because you want your own children. So we also want our own temple. So we don't see everyone as part and parcel of Krishna. Similarly, this young boy, Shringi, he reacted because that bodily identification was there, and he became angry. Last week we spoke about anger, using the machine gun for mosquitoes. So that's what he did. He did not pause. He did not go and validate both sides of the situation. He did not ask the king what happened. He did not ask his father what happened. He took the rumor as all in all, as the truth, as the absolute truth. And most detrimental of all, he reacted right on the scene. Totally detrimental. We must always understand there's always two sides to every story. It takes two hands to clap. And we always have to listen to both sides of the story before we judge. If you only heard one side, you do not make any decision or take any decision or take any side until you've heard both sides. And in this case, we could not take any side because Krishna was the third side. That means there's three sides. There's the sage's side, there's the king's side, and then there's Krishna's side. Nobody even bothers about Krishna's side nowadays. Some people consider two sides. Others don't even consider one side. Others don't consider any side. What I say is true. They'll bring their own agenda. This is the age of Kali. I'm completely bewildered. And people react. They don't pause. See, to pause means you're in the mode of goodness. If you're in a mode of ignorance, you'll be so out of it, so sleepy, you wouldn't even bother. If you're in a mode of passion, you'll react. If you're in a mode of goodness, you will pause. Be patient to react. When you're in a mode of passion, you will be overtaken by the Rudra element, anger. And Prabhupada talks about the Rudra element in the third canto. There are many earthly creatures who constantly represent the Rudra element. The snake, the tiger, the lion are always representations of Rudra. By the influence of Rudra element, the sun becomes extremely hot and the moon becomes extremely cold. Sometimes because of the extreme heat of the sun, there are cases of heat stroke. And due to the extreme coldness created by the moon, there are cases of collapse of the living conditions. There are many sages empowered with the influence of austerity, and there are many yogis, philosophers, and renouncers who sometimes exhibit their acquired power in the mode of passion, under the influence of the Rudra principle of anger. The great yogi Durvasa, under the influence of this Rudra principle, picked a quarrel with Maharaj Parikshit, and a Brahmana boy exhibited the Rudra principle by cursing the great king Parikshit. When the Rudra principle is exhibited by persons who are not engaged in devotional service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the angry person falls down from the peak of his improved position. So this young boy, Shimik Rishi, unfortunately, Shringi fell from his position. Let's see how he responds. Aho adharmam falanam ivnam bali bujam iva swamin yagam yadashanam dwarapanam sunam iva. The Brahmana's boy Shringi said, "Oh, just look at the sins of the rulers who, like crows and watchdogs at the door, perpetrate sins against their masters, contrary to the principles governing servants." So now he is taking side of his father, claiming that his father is the master, and that the king, not just one king, but all the kings, the rulers. So he's generalizing. Are crows, like crows and watchdogs, is name calling. And he's already giving judgment. They perpetrated sins against their master. And like he knows the truth, contrary to principles governing servants. So here we see his response that is very unfavorable. Maharaj Parikshit, we heard the glories of Maharaj Parikshit, no ordinary king, pure devotee of the Lord. And he's been called a watchdog. He's been called a crow. He's a swan-like Paramhamsa. But no, in the eyes of Shringi, he is a crow. He's a watchdog. He's meant to stay outside, guarding our house, guarding our hut. He is not even qualified to come inside. How dare he come inside? He's a watchdog. His position is to stay outside. Purport. The Brahmanas are considered to be the head and brain of the social body, and the Kshatriyas are considered to be the arms of the social body. The arms are required to protect the body from all harm, but the arms must act according to the direction of the head and the brain. That is the natural arrangement made by the supreme order, for it is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita that the four social orders or castes, namely the Brahmanas, Kshatriya, the Vaishyas, and the Sudras, are set up according to quality and work done by them. Naturally, the son of a Brahmana has a good chance of becoming a Brahmana by the direction of his qualified father. As a son of a medical practitioner has a very good chance of becoming a qualified medical practitioner. So the caste system is quite scientific. The son must take advantage of the father's qualification and thus become a Brahmana or medical practitioner and not otherwise. Without being qualified, one cannot become a Brahmana or medical practitioner, and that is the verdict of all scriptures and social orders. So the young boy was no doubt in a very wonderful situation because his father was very qualified as a Brahman, and therefore, being born in a Brahmanical family, he had a greater chance of becoming a qualified Brahmana. So Prabhupada is just highlighting the benefit of the Varnashram system that Krishna discusses and presents in the Bhagavad Gita. It is a very scientific system. And there is interdependence between each of the different orders. It is not that one is better than the other, just like the head, the hands, the stomach, and the legs. They're all part of the body, and they all have their due function, and they all act in harmony for the action of the whole body in terms of how the body should act and move. Here in Shringi, a qualified son of a Brahmana attained the required Brahmanical power, both by birth and by training. So he was born in a Brahmana family, and he was trained by a Brahmanical qualified Brahmana. So he had both. But he was lacking in culture because he was an inexperienced boy. So culture means a way of life with character. So he was inexperienced. He did not have the proper character, and he was inexperienced because it had not become the way of his life in terms of genuine Vedic culture. By the influence of Kali, the son of a Brahmana became puffed up with Brahmanical power and thus wrongly compared Maharaj Parikshit to crows and watchdogs. So pride, he was proud of his birth and he was proud of his training. And that pride overpowered his intelligence for him to wrongly criticize Maharaj Parikshit. The king is certainly the watchdog of the state in the sense that he keeps vigilant eyes over the border of the state for its protection and defense. But to address him as a watchdog is a sign of a less cultured boy. Thus, the downfall of the Brahmanical powers began as they gave importance to birthright without culture. The downfall of the Brahmana caste began in the age of Kali. And since Brahmanas are the heads of the social orders, all other orders of society also began to deteriorate. This beginning of Brahmanical deterioration was highly deplored by the father of Shringi, as we will find. So this pride really started destroying the whole Brahmanical culture. So we noticed, where did Kali begin his attack? Kali began his attack on the top of the rank, right at the leadership, the Brahmanical culture. As soon as the Brahmanas are destroyed, because the Brahmanas are meant to give direction, they're the head and the brain of the society. So if you can destroy the Brahmanical culture, the head, you practically destroy everything else below. So in this way, we see that Kali started attacking the leadership, the leaders. And we are all leaders in different ways. For example, we are leading a family, we're leading our children, we're leading our friends. So everyone on different level is a leader. And Kali began destroying at that level. So there's a wonderful pastime about Subudhi Rai. Subudhi Rai, Prabhupada speaks about him from the Chaitanya Charitamrita, but in the 7th canto, Prabhupada says, it is learned from Chaitanya literature that one big zamindar, Subudhi Rai, kept a Mohammedan boy as a servant. Of course, he treated the boy as his own child, and sometimes when the boy would steal something, the master would chastise him by striking him with a cane. There was a mark on the boy's back from this chastisement. Later, after the boy had, by crooked means, became Hussain Shah, the Nawab of Bengal, one day his wife saw the mark on his back and inquired about it. The Nawab replied that in his childhood he had become a servant of Subudhi Rai, who had punished him because of some mischievous activities. Upon hearing this, the Nawab's wife immediately became agitated and requested her husband to kill Subudhi Rai. Nawab Hussain Shah, of course, was very grateful to Subudhi Rai and therefore refused to kill him. But when his wife requested him to turn Subudhi Rai into a Mohammedan, the Nawab agreed. Taking some water from his water pot, he sprinkled it upon Subudhi Rai and declared that Subudhi Rai had now become a Mohammedan. So from the time of Shringi, where Kali influenced him and started degrading the culture, especially of the Brahmanical side, we find that this has increased and perpetuated over time, where even if you were serving the Mohammedans, or in this case, 500 years ago, if the water touched, if a Mohammedan had some water and he sprinkled it over you, you became a converted Muslim. And nobody in that city or village would now accept you. You would be ostracized. So that's what happened to Subudhi Rai. He became ostracized after they heard that he was touched by the water of the Mohammedan, and he was converted to a Muslim, and nobody accepted him. And he was a landlord. And when he was in the situation, he decided that, okay, since now I'm an outcast, I might as well go to Varanasi and see, become a Brahmana there. But when he came to Varanasi and he told the Brahmanas the situation, they said, oh, well, you can become a Brahmana, but you'll need to purify yourself. Okay, what do I have to do to purify myself? They told him you have to drink hot ghee, milk cow ghee. So he was thinking, well, if I drink hot, ghee, I'm going to die. They said, yes, that's exactly the point. And then next life you'll be born in a Muslim, in a Hindu family and Brahmana family, and then you can become a qualified priest. So he was wondering, wow. He went to another person and he asked another person. And the person said, no, but it wasn't your fault. You didn't intentionally do this. So you don't need to do that. So he was confused. He didn't know what to do. And due to his good fortune, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was also traveling in Varanasi. And when he saw Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he immediately went to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and he revealed his situation to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu heard the situation and also the remedy for his act, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, no, you don't need to drink hot ghee. All you have to do is sorry, my Mandri is giving a commentary here. She said fried pakora. She said, Mahaprabhu didn't say fried pakora. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, you should chant the holy name incessantly. And then you can also eat Krishna Prasad, fried pakora. But no, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said you should you should chant the holy name incessantly. Go to Vrindavan and chant the holy name incessantly. And by chanting the holy name, you become purified. And after you become purified, you continue chanting the holy name and you will become attached to the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. And he also told him to go and serve the Vaishnava. So he went, Subudhi Rai went to Vrindavan, and it is described that there in Vrindavan, even though he was very wealthy, but what he did was in Vrindavan, he would go and cut wood and he would sell that wood and he would get 5 paisa for the wood. He would take 1 paisa and buy a chickpeas with that 1 paisa. And however much chickpeas he would get from 1 paisa, he would eat that and survive. And the other 4 paisa he would put into a merchant. He would give to a merchant, like a bank account, for the merchant to keep. And whenever Vaishnavas would come from Bengal, he would then serve them. He would make sure he would provide for their resources, vegetables, milk, ghee, whatever they required, he would use that 4 paisa and make arrangements. Even when Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, when they came to Vrindavan, then Subudhi Rai would serve them, or take them take them throughout Vrindavan, provide for their needs. So in this way, he became very endeared to the Vaishnavas and got the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he continued chanting the holy name of Krishna and perfected his life. So this was just in relation to the fact that over, throughout history, and it'll continue, these things, in this material world, we do not want to suffer. We don't want make bodily distinctions. We don't want this caste consciousness. We don't want people, to be controlled and exploited. This is what we want. But unfortunately, we are living in a material world that is plagued with duality. It is designed with duality. Therefore, there will always be these things cycling at different points in time. So just as the Brahmin boy became polluted, that pollution kept on generation over generation, just different ways that pollution was coming through. Even during Prabhupada's time, Gandhi's time, there was the Harijans, untouchables. And Prabhupada would comment, how can people become untouchable? Because nobody's their body and everyone is a spiritual being, part and parcel of Krishna. So like that, this contamination infiltrated and Kali took full opportunity. 34. Brahmanesh Shatra Banduri Griha Palo Nirupati Sakatam tadkriha Twaksta Sambandam Bhoktum Arhati. The descendants of the kingly orders are definitely designated as watchdogs. Shringi is continuing. And they must keep themselves at the door. On what grounds can dogs enter the house and claim to dine with the master on the same plate? Generally, when you give to the Rudra principle, you give into the Rudra principle, which then overrides your intelligence, your mouth does not stop talking. One statement after another, it just keeps coming and just increases and complicates issues, complicates and destroys one's relationship and life. One time, when we were getting married, His Holiness Vishnu Mahavishnu from, he's late, he's from Gujarat, he was staying in London. He was visiting at that time. We were in managing the temple, and Maharaj came to visit. Very wonderful Maharaj. Just loves quoting verses and singing. In fact, loves singing verses. Very nice. So we were at that time we're getting married. So Maharaj told us a story. He gave us a gift, a frying pan, electric frying pan. So it was very wonderful. We got his blessings. And Mahavishnu Maharaj told us that actually there's a story, true story that he narrated. He said in the manor, just across the temple, or was it near the manor, somewhere in London, he was staying. Just across the temple, there was a house, and in the house, there was a couple. And the couple would practically fight every day. They would throw different things at each other. You just hear things breaking, and you would know, okay, there's a war going on. So one day they came to the temple and they asked for some advice that, how can we stop fighting? And the instruction given was, you can continue fighting, but just don't open your mouth. So they thought, okay, that's interesting. We can continue fighting. Okay, that's interesting, but don't talk. Okay, that's easy. They thought it was easy. So then, sure enough, the fighting kept on going, but you could hear the signs, the flying saucers, and in the cups and plates. So whatever was flying in the house, breaking and flying. So after some days, everything was. There was no more fighting. And then one day they eventually came back to the temple, and the devotees asked them why people stopped fighting. He said, well, it was just because we didn't speak. See, because every time if there's a fight and you speak, you just aggravate the situation. So because they didn't speak, over time it diffused the situation. So even in the spiritual world, when Radharani gets angry, she goes into man. She doesn't speak to Krishna. She just keep quiet. And Krishna doesn't like that, because Krishna likes her to speak. So Krishna then has to go and beg Radharani, please, please, please. I'll do anything. He has to please her, to break her anger, spiritual anger. So even Radharani goes in man. So we should learn, when someone triggers you, aggravates you, agitates you, presses the wrong button, presses your toes, then, as I said, just put a pause button, don't say anything, move away from the situation, and then reflect on the situation. Purport. The inexperienced Brahmana boy certainly knew that the king had asked for water from his father, and that the father did not respond. The boy tried to explain away his father's inhospitality in an impertinent manner befitting an uncultured boy. So now, not only did he not hear both sides, he already took his father's side because he's his father. He started name calling. And now he started motivating why his father was actually right. So he started explaining why his father's response of hospitality was actually correct. He was not at all sorry for the king's not being well received. On the contrary, he justified the wrong act in a way characteristic of a Brahmana, of the Brahmanas of Kali Yuga. He compared the king to a watchdog and thus concluded it was wrong for the king to enter the house of a Brahmana and ask for water from the same pot. So this is how one implicates oneself. One hears a situation, one reads something on Facebook, and immediately one conjures up, make sides, take sides. We have to be very careful. Consider Lord Nityananda. Lord Nityananda kicks Advaita Acharya in his chest. If you see that situation, you have to be very careful. Don't take sides. Because you don't know who is who. You don't know who's involved in the situation. You don't know Krishna's hand in that situation. So one should be very careful of taking sides. That's also a principle in Vaishnava etiquette. Now, those who are in justice, those who are in leadership, it is their duty to obviously hear both sides and understand and guide and direct. But otherwise, we should be very careful. I normally give the example, two devotees fight. And it so happened that you just arrived at the temple to see the situation. And now you got a story to tell. Because you have to use the number of words that's allocated to you. So now you see the situation and you go home and you phone somebody and tell them, oh, today I went to the temple and you know what I saw? You won't believe what I saw. Right in the temple, in front of the deities. You won't believe. What? No, you won't believe. No, tell me what. And then you start telling him. But in the meantime, the devotees who fought, they felt bad, they regretted, mistaken, and then they, begged forgiveness, and then they started taking prasad, and now from their side, they're friends now. So they fought, they made it up. From Krishna's perspective, Krishna's very happy. You took what you saw, and now you don't know what has transpired now, and now you start contaminating the minds of other devotees. That is the act of Kalya. And then all of a sudden you find that your devotion, your taste for chanting reduces and drops, and you're wondering, what happened? I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't fight with anyone. So we have to be very careful when we're dealing, when we're seeing situations. So Shringi, unfortunately, was in the situation. Then Prabhupada now continues to say, the dog is certainly reared as by its master. But that doesn't mean the dog shall claim to dine and drink from the same pot. This mentality of false prestige is the cause of fall down, is the cause of downfall of the perfect social order. And we can see that in the beginning, it was started by an inexperienced son of a Brahmana. As a dog is never allowed to enter within the room and hearth, although it is reared by the master. Similarly, according to Shringi, the king had no right to enter the house of Shamika Rishi. According to the boy's opinion, the king was on the wrong side and not his father. And thus he justified his silent father. So in Brahminical culture also, that because of the Brahmanas would generally have deities in their homes, and dogs are generally not allowed inside because dogs are not clean. And therefore dogs, if one has dogs, generally they stay outside. But yeah, they are not classified, they're not considered clean. So Shringi was the first Brahmana to fall prey to Kali and fall, and he is seeing the situation from his perspective, and he's calling Maharaj Parikshit a dog, a watchdog. And it's interesting, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur in one song, he sings, Kali Kukura Kadana Yaddi Chaho He, Kali Yuga Pavana Kali Bhayanashana, Sri Sachinandana Gao He. If you want to be rid of the influence of the dog-like personality of Kali, then just sing the glories of the beautiful son of Mother Sachi Sachinandan. He is the savior of Kali Yuga Pavana, and he is Kali Bhayanashana, the destroyer of all fear caused by the age of quarrel. So here, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur is calling Kali a dog-like personality. And Kali, who's seen as a dog-like personality by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, influences Shringi, who sees Maharaj Parikshit as a dog. So when you get influenced like a dog-like personality like Kali, you see your qualities in others. So here we see how the fault that Shringi had, he projected those faults on Maharaj Parikshit. And therefore, we have to be very, very careful. There's a nice example of a lady was staying in apartment, and she was looking at the neighbor's apartment across. There was laundry on the line, and she was saying, her clothes are so dirty. Just see, doesn't she wash her clothes? Just she put the clothes on line. It's always dirty. What's wrong with her? She kept on blaming her neighbor. But little did she realize that she was seeing the clothes of the neighbor through her window. She was seeing the clean clothes of the neighbor through her window, which was dirty. And therefore she was finding fault with the neighbor. So like that, when we see faults in others, it is described that in most cases, those faults exist in you, and therefore you're able to perceive or see those faults. Otherwise, you will not be able to see the fault. So we can take this beautiful instruction from Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur that in this age of Kali, we should take full shelter of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and sing his beautiful glories. Because Mahaprabhu is Kali Yuga Pavan. He is the savior of the fallen souls of Kali Yuga. So our saving grace is no doubt Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Text 35. Krishna Gati Bhagavati Shastarya Utpata Gaminam Tadbina Set Tun Adayam Shashmi Pashyata Me Balam. After the departure of Lord Shri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, the supreme ruler of everyone, these upstarts have flourished, our protector being gone. Therefore, I shall take up this matter and punish them. Just see my power. So now the saga continues. He's adding to the number of name callings. Now you're not just a watchdog, you're not just a crow, you even upstart. You are rogue, you are rascal. So now he's adding to his verbal abuse and verbal offenses. And then he says, yeah, Lord Krishna was our protector. Now because Krishna is gone, you people think you can rule and cause havoc. I will show you. So now he wants to take the position of Krishna as the protector. And he's a small boy. Inexperienced boy, Prabhupada says. But he wants to take the matter in his hand, and I will punish them. Oh, see, just see, I'm powerful. He's telling all his friends, just see my power, see what I do. And no doubt he had the power to curse. But you can see the pride. And why the pride? Because when you think that the power that you received is by your efforts, you become proud of that power. When you understand that all powers, all abilities, all resources come from Krishna, then you will not become puffed up and proud. Prabhupada talks about borrowed plumes. Here we see Krishna has many feathers around him, peacock feathers. So when you put the peacock feathers on your head, you feel very proud. See, but those are borrowed plumes from Krishna. So we should be very careful, because pride comes before the fall. When you start becoming proud, you will fall. It's a first sign of fall down. And we see Shringi is sliding fast. Prabhupada in the purport says, the inexperienced Brahmana, puffed up by a little Brahmanical tejas, became influenced by the spell of Kali Yuga. Maharaj Parikshit gave license to Kali to live in 4 places, as mentioned herein before. But by the king's very expert government, the personality of Kali could hardly find the place allotted him. The personality of Kali, therefore, was seeking for the opportunity to establish authority, and by the grace of the Lord, he found a chance in the form of puffed up, inexperienced son of a Brahmana. The little Brahmana wanted to show his prowess in destruction, and he had the audacity to punish such a great king as Maharaj Parikshit. He wanted to take the place of Lord Krishna after his departure. These are the principal signs of upstarts who want to take the place of Shri Krishna under the influence of the age of Kali. An upstart with little power wants to become an incarnation of Lord. There have been many false incarnations since the departure of Lord Krishna from the face of the globe, and they have misled the innocent public, accepting spiritual obedience of the general mass of people to maintain false prestige. In other words, the personality of Kali got the opportunity to reign through the son of the Brahmana Shringi. 36. Ityuktva rosatam raksho vayasyan rishibalakam kaushikyapa upasprishya vagvajram vishara vishash raj vagvajram vishasharjaham. The son of the Rishi, his eyes red hot with anger, touch the water of the river Kaushika while speaking to his playmates, and discharge the following thunderbolt of words. So he was fully absorbed in the Rudra principle, angry like anything. His eyes were red hot, and he uttered the following words that we're going to hear soon. The circumstances under which Maharaj Parikshit was cursed, simply childish, as it appears from this verse. Shringi was showing his impudency amongst his playmates who were innocent. Any sane man would have prevented him from doing such great harm to all human society by killing a king like Maharaj Parikshit just to make a show of acquired Brahmanical power. Inexperienced son of Brahmana committed a great mistake. So he was thinking that he's doing good. He's justified his action. he is giving due punishment to the king who deserves it. But he does not recognize that by killing Maj Parikshit, he was causing so much harm, inconceivable harm, to practically the whole planet. Because Kali naturally took over and caused so much destruction. 37. Iti langita maryadam dakshaka saptame hani dangshanti sma kulankaram chodito me tatta druham. The Brahmana's son cursed the king thus: on the 7th day from today, a snake bird will bite the most wretched one of that dynasty, Maj Parikshit, because of his having broken the law of etiquette by insulting my father. Purport. Thus the misuse of Brahmanical power began, and gradually nearly all the Brahmanas in the age of Kali became devoid of both Brahmanical power and powers in culture. The Brahmana boy considered Maj Parikshit to be Kulangara, or wretched of the dynasty. But factually, the Brahmana boy himself was so, because only from him did the Brahmana's caste become powerless, like a snake whose poisoned teeth are broken. The snake is fearful as long as his poisonous teeth are there. Otherwise, he is fearful only to children. The personality of Kali conquered the Brahmana boy first, and gradually the other caste. Thus, the whole scientific system of the orders of society in this age has assumed the form of a vitiated caste system, which is now being uprooted by another class of men similarly influenced by the age of Kali. One should see to this root cause of vitiation and not try to condemn the system as it is without knowledge of its scientific value. So the original system that Krishna introduced had become converted, polluted, diverted from what it was. And that's why Prabhupada is talking about how the system becomes changed. And now it's like everybody calls it a caste system. And with that caste system obviously came further pollutions, that now you have to be born in a Brahmin family to be a Brahmana. And then, if you're born in another caste, you become untouchables. So like that, it just became the variation and the changes and permutations of pollution just increased over time. It all started with this Brahmana boy. 38. Tato byat yesh sharam balo gale sarpa kale varam pitaram vikshya dukarto mukta kato ruruddaha. Thereafter, when the boy returned to the hermitage, he saw the snake on his father's shoulder, and out of his grief, he cried very loudly. Purport. The boy was not happy because he committed a great mistake, and he wanted to be relieved of the burden on his heart by crying. So after entering the hermitage and seeing his father in that condition, he cried loudly so that he might be relieved, but it was too late. Father regretted the whole incident. And this is generally what happens. If you don't put a pause button and you react and you get influenced by the Rudra principle and you start saying the wrong things and you implicate and aggravate the situation even worse, after that, you will regret. So better than regretting the situation, as we mentioned. Take shelter of the mode of goodness, pause, leave, take shelter of the holy name, take shelter of proper guidance, take shelter of the wisdom in the Prabhupada's books, understand what's the best thing to do to please Krishna and not be right or wrong. We are not here to tick all the votes of right and wrong. When you leave this world, Krishna doesn't say, oh, let's see how many times you were right and how many times you were wrong. No. Krishna is interested in your attachment to his lotus feet, nothing else. You could be 100% right in every situation and not be attached to the lotus feet of Krishna, you're going to hell. So we want to be attached to Krishna and not be bothered about right or wrong. What pleases Krishna, that is the best. Right? So here we see the young boys regretting the situation. And as Prabhupada writes, it's too late. 39. Sarva angi raso brahman shrutva sutta vilapamanam unmilya shanakair netre drishtva chamsem mrito gharam. O Brahmanas, the Rishi, who was born in the family of Angira Muni, hearing his son crying, gradually opened his eyes and saw the dead snake around his neck. So now the boy was crying, that disturbed the father, and the father now opened his eyes to see why is his son crying. And the first thing that the sage sees is the snake. Now let's see how the father responds to the snake. The son had heard, so Maharaj Parikshit had put the snake, he regretted it. The son had heard about his father getting garlanded by a snake, and he reacted completely out of context. Let's see how the father responds when he sees a dead snake on himself. Some may jump, but let's see how the sage responds in this situation. Text 40. Vishrijyatam cha pracham vatsa kashmadiro dishi kena vate prakritam ityukta sa san vedayat. He threw the dead snake aside and asked his son why he was crying, whether anyone had done him harm. On hearing this, the son explained to him what had happened. Let me read that again. He threw the dead snake aside and asked his son why he was crying, whether anyone had done him harm. So the sage opens his eyes, see the snake, takes the snake and drops it off and says, son, why are you crying? What happened? The snake did not even disturb his consciousness at all. He didn't, the adjectives, if you look at, there's no adjectives here. He agitatedly, he aggressively, he angrily threw the snake. No, there is no adjectives described here in this statement. That means he was not disturbed. He was dirastatra numuyati. He was not disturbed at all. He didn't even, okay, now snake, I don't know, maybe how the snake came. Okay, no problem, do the snake and drop it to one side. And his son was more the focus of his consciousness than the snake. If it was me, it was, the snake would become more the important subject than the son, right? It's like, son is, by the way, who put a snake? Why did it? So this is how the sage responded, very soberly. It was not disturbed at all. Purport. The father did not take the dead snake on his neck very seriously. He simply threw it away. Actually, there was nothing seriously wrong in Maharaj Parikshit's act. but the foolish son took it very seriously, and being influenced by Kali, he cursed the king and thus ended a chapter of happy history. So he really took a machine gun for a mosquito, and he really transformed a molehill into a mountain, and really destroyed the lives of many because the influence of Kali. And next week, we will continue and hear what Shumiki Rishi tells his son. When the son tells him exactly what had happened, we will hear exactly how his father responds to that situation. Thus ends set of these verses. Grantraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Gopramanande, Hari Hari Bol. So next week we will complete this chapter 18, and then we will conclude the 19th chapter, which then concludes the first canto of the Bhagavatam. Are there any questions or comments in regards to this set of verses that we heard in relation to the very inappropriate response that we should never ever follow of Shringi? Any questions?
Haribol Prabhu.
Yes, Hare Krishna.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Sorry, I think it's better to do it via voice as opposed to chat.
No
so
problem.
I think the Lord was speaking to me directly through this class. I don't always get the opportunity to join, but it's quite special to have listened to this wisdom today. And I think as you spoke, my questions kind of evolved and evolved. So about pausing, and it's not about right and wrong. It's about, about attaching to the Lord's lotus feet more than anything else. And I think that for me, I still consider myself to be a very young devotee. So when I deal with devotees, it's very different. I take a very, very humble stance and, kind of just deal with them in a very respectful manner. But when it comes to your sort of daily engagement with the material world and, family situations and more, where you're finding injustices in certain relationships, not particularly to me, I tend to become very kind of hot-headed because I think it goes back to my professional training. I am a lawyer by profession, so I think I take a very hard line when I feel that our people are, offended or hurt. So the thing that worries me the most is not so much the reaction that at that point, it's like what I find is it disturbs my sadhana and it consumes my mind to that extent that I can't chant properly. And, that's the most important thing at the end of the day. Like you said, we need to focus on attaching to the Lord's feet. But sometimes when these situations, they just broil and broil. And then you say to yourself, this is not going to be of any consequence at the time of death. But here I am, and that time of death can come at any time. I really don't want to be thinking about the situation, nor the individual.
Sorry, you got muted. Manusha, unmute yourself again. We lost you.
Haribol.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Did you say?
Yeah. No, you're back. Yeah.
But the long story short is that how do we stay focused? It's we humans, we emotional, and my most important consideration is I don't want the quality of my sadhana to drop because of something that's not going to matter at the time of death. Long story short.
Yes. So what you shared is a definitely real situation, and it's because of your occupation. Let's say it is even more aggravated.
Yeah.
If you were not a lawyer, because a lawyer by nature, the fact that you took law means you love justice, right?
Yes.
Like right and wrong, and you want the right thing to be done.
Yeah.
Which is not wrong, but and from what you've shared, the little advice I can share is even though you're a lawyer by occupation, you need to detach yourself from the outcome and being the judge, jury, and executioner.
Yeah.
Right? So, and you need to do that at least. So in one sense, you need to detach yourself, because the best would be, let's say, for example, okay, I don't want to be in this and I wouldn't, in Kali Yuga, it's a nightmare. It becomes worse because depending on the situations you're dealing with, etc. So the best would say, okay, I don't want to deal with this profession. Let me do something more sattvic. But that may not be a practical solution. So you may still have to practice law, but you'll slowly need to practice law in a detached spirit. And you'll need to cultivate that detached spirit initially until you completely detached from the outcome and, let's say, take more internal guidance to give guidance. When you become totally detached, now it will not impact your chanting as if you are, or in the case where you completely engrossed in that outcome.
Yeah.
And the sign of whether you are succeeding would be measured the next day when you're chanting.
True.
So if the next day you're chanting and your mind is reeling back and thinking about this and that, that means you are getting very much into the situation. It's very interesting. I'm with a group of individuals who have a higher vibration in terms of frequency, in terms of how, compared to normal people. Just like as devotees, we have a higher frequency from a Krishna conscious perspective than other people. So I'm with a group of individuals, and their understanding is, we are not here to judge or to change people. Let the individuals learn from their situation, and let them grow from their situation. Madri says there are many lessons to be taught, but you are not the teacher. You are not always the teacher.
Yeah.
Krishna may use time to present the appropriate teachers.
Sure.
So it's true. And I would take your situation to be a very wonderful situation. So take it in a positive light that, yes, you have an occupation and you know that the right thing ultimately is to surrender to Krishna.
Yeah.
Try to take your Krishna consciousness seriously and nicely, and now you can measure, you can use your occupation as a ruler to see whether you are transcending your occupation to become more attached to Krishna. Right?
Thanks,
so
Prabhu.
it'll become a yardstick and a measuring. And as you progress, and remember, it may not be over time, it may not be instant, right? So let's say 100 cases. Over the 100 cases that you deal with, you'll see as you're doing 10, 20, now you're by 30. And now if you measure the response of 30 to the first, you find, wow, I can chant more nicely now. That's wonderful. And then as you go to 60, you'll see that the judgment you made is more effective because now your chanting is more appropriate. If you look at Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur was a judge. He was an advocate. He was a magistrate. And he himself was making decisions, very, very efficiently, but never getting affected. So it's a good occupation, and you can use it to your advantage to now measure your Krishna consciousness but the realization you got is perfect and wonderful, that whatever you do today will impact your chanting tomorrow. For example,
you get angry at yourself because you say to yourself, why are you letting this? This is so inconsequential to the bigger picture. But yeah, you can't say the Lord's names with full attention and concentration and focus like how you should, you know.
Correct. Yeah. It's like if you watch an inappropriate DVD, guaranteed the next morning you'll not be able to change your rounds.
True.
Right? Or if we eat non-Krishna Prasad, next day you'll not be able to change your rounds.
Yeah.
So yes, it is. Thank you for sharing that. And
thank you for the advice and guidance, Prabhu. Appreciate it.
I pray that you will be able to use your abilities more in the service of Krishna. That would be the best price. If not, become a little more detached and use that as a yardstick to measure your chanting and how detached you are able to give a judgment without being the person to judge the right and the wrong. Yeah, let Krishna be the judge. You make a judgment decision and leave the rest to Krishna.
Thanks so much, Prabhu. That really means a lot, and you brought a lot of peace to my heart. It's actually not with relation to so much professional, but dealing in personal situations where, I still feel the need to sort of advocate on behalf of those that are sort of without defenses, but it's the same principles at the end of the day as well.
Correct.
Same principles. Thank you very much, Prabhu. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Krishna, thank you very much. All right, let's see. Bafana Prabhu says, it's so nice to hear beginning of the discourse of the Rudra principle. It's practically expounded in Bhakti Tirtha Swami's book, Anger of the Enemy of the Mind, Spiritual Warrior. Anger, this gets so nicely managed if one reads his comments as well. I'm bewildered at this boy's melodrama while the father is calm. Yes. And Bafana also, it's so nice to hear advocate lawyers saying Prabhu. Yes. So thank you very much for everyone's participation and association. Next week, we will continue to hear. And the beauty of the Bhagavatam is, as Srila Mahaprabhu had described to Subudhi Rai, that simply by taking shelter of the holy name, all our sins will be eradicated. So simply by hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam with attention, regularly, systematically, whatever impurities is there, Nastaprayashu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. Prabhupada says almost destroyed. It's like 80 to 90%. Everything that's in our heart, all the impurities that is there, that's giving us a birth in this world, everything will be destroyed simply by paying oral attention to the Bhagavatam and serving the pure devotees of the Lord. So thank you very much again. Vantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. We will meet again next week. Hare Krishna.